Hello, I'm Karma Kitaj, and I'm your host for A Livelihood, New Adventures as We Age. Today I'm going to introduce you to Grace Stevens, and Grace is going to tell us about a very big personal transition that she has gone through in the past couple of years. So let's welcome Grace.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me to come today, Karma.
Oh, wow. I think it's very special for me to have you.
Thank you.
So I'm remembering that you and I met at an improvisation workshop with Diana Giardella.
That's right.
Yeah. And I think you and I did a little skit together. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit heavy, maybe. And then at the end, I remember I went to give you a hug, and you handed me your hand. I think you apologized to me later, and you said, I'm just learning these new social skills. So why don't you talk about what that's about for you?
Sure. Well, as you know, and to your audience, as I'm transgender, and up until about 2 years ago, I was a guy. And it was a very long and hard decision that I had kept hidden for well over 50 years on trying to figure out what the gender issues that I was dealing with were about. And I finally had come to the point that this was not a choice for me. This was something that I had to do in my life and transition. So I became the person that I truly am. And with all of those years, well over 50, close to 60 years of living as a guy, socialization skills of being a woman are all new to me.
So when you and I met a few years ago, I think you were just going through some of the physical procedures, surgical procedures, right?
Right. So again, for people like me, whether or not people have surgical procedures or not is just a level of detail of really trying to understand who they are authentically in their own body, in their own sense of being. There are many people who are transgender, who are transsexual, who will not have any surgery. But for me, the choices were that was going to be part of who I was and what I needed to do for me. But it's just my journey is my journey, and each of the people in the community take their own journey.
And you're now very involved in the community, the trans community, right?
I've become one of the leaders within both the Tiffany Club of New England and at our conference first event, which is held every January here. And I've also, part of my reinvention is not only about my gender, but what I do about it. So I've created a business that goes into corporations and schools and governments where I can train people about gender variance, about the whole spectrum of gender variance. Gender is really a spectrum and a continuity. So most people believe that gender is binary. You're male or you're female. And the truth of the matter is it's not binary. I like to tell people it's not even digital. It's an analog across a spectrum. And who I am today may be different than who I was yesterday or who I'll be tomorrow. And gender can be very fluid. And further, people get confused in that a person's gender and a person's gender identity has to be aligned with their sexual orientation, their sexual behaviors, their gender expression. And each of these constructs are really independent and also non-binary. And that for many people like me, it's very difficult for us to get to a level of self-acceptance that this is who I am and this is what I'm like, when the culture says, no, you can't be that.
So, Grace, what would you say were some of the first indications you remember having as a young person that there were some gender issues?
Wow, that goes way back. It really is challenging to think about the detail of how did I know when I was different when it just seemed I knew that I was different.
Do you remember expressing some of those wishes when you were a youngster?
It was very scary to express. I remember when no one was home and my mother was out wearing her clothes and being in panic if I ever heard a key in the door.
So would you say that you didn't have close friends growing up?
That's a fair statement. I didn't have friends. I didn't. It was very tough because I was so busy in my head, there's something wrong. I feel female, but my orientation was I was attracted to females. I went back to school before I transitioned and still wasn't clear around what my journey would be and what my path was be. And in my third year in school, I wrestled with signing up for a class called Counseling GLBT. And when I signed up for it, I knew that I would come out in that class. And then I did a presentation for the project on what was called Under the Transgender Umbrella, Male to Female Transsexuals. And when I started the presentation, I had a cartoon of the elephant in the room. And I announced, I'm the elephant in the room, I'm transgender. And the room got very quiet. There were 15 students there with me. And the 15-minute presentation turned into a 45-minute presentation. And I found 4 female classmates that would start going out with Grace and be my first socialization out in the world. After I did the presentation, I had to find community. And that's when I had to force myself to find the local community at Tiffany Club of New England. And it was very scary for me to call them. It was very scary for me to go there. One of the themes of Tiffany Club is you are not alone. So for many transgender people, we think we're the only people that struggle with this. And the answer, the truth is, we're not. There are many people that have some sort of issue around their gender identity. We kind of know statistically in the U.S. it's about 0.25% of the adult male population does transition. And I've seen studies coming out of the UK that they would not be surprised if people with gender identity issues can range from 1% to 5% of the population.
So, you know, I want us to talk in the last few minutes here about what you're doing in terms of new work.
Sure.
And what you're hoping for. So why don't you let us know about that?
So this past year has been a year of reinvention for me, continuing. I've created 2 businesses. I've created the Gender Variance Education and Training, where I go into corporations and schools and do training. I'm also in process of creating a group therapy practice that I'm calling Transportive Relationships Counseling, where I'm looking to create groups for people who are in positive relationships with transgender people, so they can come together and talk about just normal relationship struggles that they may be having with the people that they're in a relationship with, without having to explain to others that they're trans. I'm hoping to get that started and seeing if there are people be interested to do that. I'm also hoping to do more speaking and speaking about being authentic in your life, that it's taken me so long to reach this level of authenticity in my life. And for me, the issue was gender, but how many of us are really struggling with not being the person they know they are inside?
Right. So you'd like to launch a public speaking
I
business.
would. I would like to be able to become a speaker about living your authentic life.
And you're learning how to be a motivational speaker, I guess.
I am. Yeah, I've been going to some classes at the National Speakers Association, and over the past year, I've done a number of speaking events. I've been into schools, I've been into corporations, I've been teaching fellow therapists about the gender world. And I'm getting more and more comfortable being up in front, talking and responding to questions, and being very open on my journey and my path.
You also mentioned that you'd like to be writing a book, right?
I am planning on writing a book that's going to talk about parts of my journey, and at least as a subtitle, it'll be musing on my many transitions.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story here, and I'm sure it's going to be meaningful for people to look at you and listen to you and recognize that you're a beautiful woman who
Thank you so much.
is very comfortable with herself now.
Yes, I am. Thank you so much for having me.